Hello everybody and welcome to another semi-mini Minecraft Disney Q&A. I'm hoping to make these a little bit longer. Some people have been in favor of the shorter ones, some people like the longer ones. Maybe we could find something in the middle. So let's go take a walk around the Magic Kingdom and answer some questions. So, first up, we have a question from Jakey Jurin, who says, "Hey Rob, on Wednesday, I read over 3 Disney blogs, and they all said the next planned country is Puerto Rico. Many Puerto Rican companies are on board, and the government too. This is to gain tourism for the real country. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks." So what he's talking about is Puerto Rico recently announced that they'll be returning to the Food and Wine Festival for the, I think, 2014 and 2015. But on top of that, they have expressed interest in having serious discussions about becoming more of a permanent installation as one of the new country pavilions in World Showcase. Now, all they've really said is that they've got investors who are excited about it. They would like to have serious talks, and it is totally possible that the serious talks could begin as soon as this year. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean we should start getting ready to go visit Puerto Rico and Epcot? Not necessarily. I mean, talks are the very, very early stages of what could be a very long process. I mean, sometimes talks are really quick. Look at Oculus Rift getting bought by Facebook. They said that acquisition took a matter of weeks, and that went into effect, and it happened. Sometimes talks could go on for years and years and years before anything actually ends up happening. So there's no official announcement. Disney, of course, is never going to sort of like report on rumors like that. They might admit that they're in talks, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything's in the plans. But hey, that'd be pretty cool. I'd be all for it. I am all for change and new things in the parks. I think there's been a lot of hostility recently, especially with Maelstrom and the Backlot Tour and removing some of the musical acts, but I am all for change in the parks. I think it's exciting. It gives you the opportunity to have new and better things. And, I mean, Disney's the sort of company that's going to want to have good quality entertainment there. So if they try something that doesn't work, they're going to try something else. I mean, it's just bound to happen. So, I'm all for it. Great question though, and I guess my question for you guys is, what country would you like to see in World Showcase? I think it'd be an interesting one. I think the real question would be where they would put it. There are a couple of spots for it, but who knows where specifically it would go. Our next question comes from the Emerald Sword, who asks, "I have another question for you. How do you think that music affects the way we perceive rides, and how do you think the way we perceive rides affects the music on that ride?" Ooh, that's a heady question. Hold the phones. Okay, so how do I think music affects the way we perceive rides? I think it plays a very large part. I think part of what makes a Disney attraction is that it tries to engage all of your senses, whether it's sight and sound. Sound's a super important one. That's one that, crosses all of the entertainment mediums we have, music and movies and television, video games, maybe not so much books, but it's a super, super important one. And I mean, that's why they always put so much work into their scores, because, music is a very emotional art form, and, Disney wants to evoke certain emotions in you when you're watching or experiencing these attractions. So of course they're going to put something in there. Now, your second question, how do we think the way we perceive rides affects the music on that ride, is that's an interesting question that I didn't actually realize you were asking until I read it out loud. So I guess if I had to come up with an answer like off the cuff like this, I would say that we perceive rides in a very fluid manner, which is to say, when you have a scene in a movie, there's an end to the scene and then the next scene begins. There's a cut in those scenes. When you change chapters in a book, that chapter ends and the next one begins. It's a very stark and clear and crisp transition. But in an attraction, you don't really have that, unless it's like a film attraction, like maybe Universe of Energy or something. But normally you're riding through these rooms, and there are these parts in between where it's almost like a fade more than anything else, where you're going from one room to the next, and there's that sort of middle area. And actually, as we're walking around here, that's a great example, is there going to be these points where you're sort of in between. And I think Disney is very smart about cleverly designing these areas so it doesn't feel weird. It feels as normal as possible. And you sort of see it in the way it transitions from lands. You sort of hear it in the way that music transitions from room to room, is that they really want to make it sound as smooth and as, I guess, behind the scenes as possible. Like, they don't want you to be aware of it. And that's a general, common trend with music in general for film too, is, they want the music to be good, but they don't want it to be so outstanding that you actually stop paying attention to the story to pay attention to the music, because then it's not doing its job. It's supposed to help the story, not trump the story. And I think that was a really great question. I totally did not see that one coming. Our next question comes from B-Fish Alex Imagineering, who asks, "Hey Rob, I have another question for your Q&A. So here goes. I recently heard that a Mount Fuji roller coaster attraction was supposed to take place in the Japan Pavilion. And I was wondering if you know the specifics about what it was going to really be, and if it had been made, what do you think would have happened to the real mountain-based coaster we have today, Expedition Everest? Thanks and have a magical day." So yeah, there was originally plans for there to be a Mount Fuji roller coaster attraction in the Japan Pavilion. It was aptly named. It was going to be sponsored by Fujifilm. And rumor is, well, I guess, I don't know if it's rumor or like hard fact if they've admitted it, but the idea is one of the main reasons it never happened was because Kodak was sponsoring the Imagination Pavilion over by Journey into Imagination, and that sort of conflict of interest between Fujifilm and Kodak caused the plans to not, they just sort of fell through. And I'm sure budget played a big part of that too. As we'll talk about in another Q&A, Epcot went way over budget. It would have been, as far as all I know, is it would have been a roller coaster, and it would have been on Mount Fuji, probably going through, the rocks and things like that. Not very different from Expedition Everest. Now your second question, what would have happened to Expedition Everest if the Mount Fuji ride existed? That's a good question. I don't know. There are different ways you could think about it. I think on one hand, by being two separate parks, you can argue that nothing would have really changed. They still would have needed that roller coaster, that thrill ride in the Animal Kingdom. On the other hand, if you want to look at the big picture stuff, you could have argued that, okay, well, maybe Epcot would have gone so over budget by putting in this roller coaster that maybe they wouldn't have had the money to do Hollywood Studios later down the line, and maybe Hollywood Studios would have come before the Animal Kingdom, and maybe Animal Kingdom wouldn't be nearly as developed as it is today. It's hard to play that sort of what-if game because there are just so many dominoes, and you don't know which ones affect the others. That's also what makes it really fun to play, is because you can try and figure that out. But I don't think they would have just discounted an Expedition Everest just because there was another mountain ride, so to speak. I mean, look at Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin and Toy Story Midway Mania. Very similar rides in both the movies they're based on and then their sort of execution. But they're in different parks, so they serve a different purpose. Next question comes from the Disney Lover 71. Favorite World Showcase Pavilion and why? This one's quick and easy. It is Germany. Oh, no, it's not quick and easy. I lied. This is a tough one. I love Germany because of the indoor-outdoor stuff, as you might have known in my latest Q&A with Christine. I love it for the food and the drinks, but I really love Italy for the food too, and I love Mexico for the food and the indoor and outdoor. I'd say those are my top three: Mexico and Italy and Germany. Japan's cool too. They're all great. I guess if I had to pick one, if tonight, maybe because I'm in the mood for Italian, I would have gone to Italy. I think that Italian architecture is super beautiful. But that's another good question for you guys. Which one and why? And then lastly this week, Josh Zilka asks, when are you going to do a tour of the Animal Kingdom or water parks? This is a great question. I actually get it pretty often, and I never really answer it clearly. The truth of the matter is I haven't touched them yet because those are parts of Disney that I do not feel as comfortable with teaching yet, and that's because I haven't read up on them nearly as much as the history of the Magic Kingdom or Epcot or even Hollywood Studios. A lot of what I've read involves the Eisner era, so it sort of barely touches on things like Blizzard Beach. It doesn't really touch on the Animal Kingdom that much, although that was a big part of his era. But I really want to make sure I'm comfortable with teaching that stuff, and I feel like I know what is important to know and what is interesting to know. So I guess really the answer is when I feel like I know enough about them, to be honest. And partially, like, I just did a redo of the Magic Kingdom tour where I made it interactive that sort of tied in the smaller episodes for each ride into the larger tour. And so I'd like to redo that with Epcot. I'd like to do that with the Hollywood Studios, and then from there sort of go into the Animal Kingdom and then eventually the water parks. So I don't have a hard date for you, unfortunately, but know that I'm putting it off, not because I'm lazy or I don't want to, but I want to make sure if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Hopefully you're enjoying that these are a little bit longer. They're still shorter than the long episodes. They're a little bit longer than that one question episode. Let me know what you think. If you have a question, you could ask me in the comments below. You could tweet at me. I'm at Rob Plays on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at Rob Plays That Game, as well as Facebook. And I also have a Patreon for this channel, to support this channel, and it is patreon.com/RobPlaysThatGame. Anyway, have a fantastic week, everybody. Whatever you do, and make the most of it, because it makes it so much better. And I hope to see you all next time for the next Disney Q&A. Bye, everybody.